Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 2021's 810 Day. I'm Lehari, and with me is.
I'm Eljay.
And together today, we are doing a follow up interview with Mr. Darvell Hunt, who sadly was not able to make the big interview with all the contributor panel that we did earlier today. So, with all that being said, Darvell, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Glad you guys are excited about this game. This is really cool.
Yeah, well, we are excited about a lot of things that you've had a hand in, as it so happens. Actually,
Yeah.
do have one quick unrelated to most things question. What are you currently rocking as far as the headset's concerned? It looks familiar.
This is a Skull Candy. It's a nice set that I use for working. It has a nice deep bass on it. It's a really cool set. It cost me like 300 bucks, but for work, it cancels out all the sound and lets me listen to some rock. So
Nice.
I have to turn all the bass down when I've got the people talking, but yeah, it's a pretty good set.
Well, we know how that is. But either way, it's awesome to have you with us, and I'm glad that we were able to do this follow up before the big event. All right.
Sure.
So, I think we're just going to kind of jump right on into some of the questions, just because we do want to make sure that we use your time wisely, use our time wisely, all that good jazz. So, if you wouldn't mind, kind of digging in a little bit. If you were to try to develop Legend of Mana Nui using today's tech, what do you think that you would do differently? I mean, a lot of things have changed. A lot of new engines have come out. A lot of new engine development techniques have come out. Is there anything in particular that you yourself would have tried to achieve?
Sure. What we were using was primarily an engine that Sapphire built that they used on multiple games. So, I mean, it had its own quirks and problems. I'd probably use something that's more mainstream, something that we knew worked and, had successes with other games. I pretty much did all the physics in the game, and what I got when I started with the company, they didn't really have very good physics. So I had pretty much rewrite the entire physics engine for it. So there's a lot of stuff that's probably more off the shelf, more gaming related. I mean, this is back in 2000, 2001. So there's a lot of the stuff we did by hand. So some of that stuff is done, automatically sometimes. Even with the video cards, one of the biggest problems we had was compatibility with video cards because there were so many different companies that made them, and there just really wasn't a good standard for all of them. So.
Yeah, needing wrappers and things like that just to even make stuff run on one machine versus another versus another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, when I left the company and they gave me the sample game to run on my computer at home, I couldn't even get it to run because it wasn't compatible with my video card. So
That's a pain in the butt, and I'm sure some of the people who've worked on ports or any of the trying to bring anything forward, especially from that era, have to deal with Voodoo wrapper and things along those lines that try
yeah,
to mimic the old environment. So,
exactly.
but either way, that's pretty cool. I admit to not being the biggest tech head in terms of understanding the in-depth elements here, but UE4 just looks really really cool, and I really like Bionicle and UE4. So. But either way, that's pretty cool. You mentioned physics. Would you like to try to make it a little bit more physics based in terms of the gameplay as well, or just making sure that everything's like all polished off for the environments?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of standards that have come into games now with physics since then. Like for when I was doing the game, we had one of the Toas that would swim, and I really hadn't ever seen swimming in any 3D game at that point, and I wasn't really even sure what rules I should follow. So I just pretty much made them up as I went along. In fact, I added a gravity pull down, which I don't see in many swimming games today. The tower looked pretty heavy, so I assumed that gravity would pull them down, and if you didn't actually swim, you would eventually sink to the bottom. There's some things like that. That I think could be improved nowadays.
Gotcha, and that's a really interesting thing, and I very much like that level of thought, that level of care that you put into that idea in particular, because it is such a unique visual that we have going on with a lot of the Bionicle stuff. That
Hmm.
unique physics interactions are always something that I love to think about. I love to kind of play with in my own mind. So that's very
Sure.
cool.
Sure. Any movement that you see in the game, I was pretty much the one responsible for doing that code. Like the following on the train, like you walk on the train, or any swimming or jumping or bouncing, any like the rocks rolling, anything like that was implemented with my new physics engine that I created after I started there. What they had just didn't really work very well. In fact, when you'd walk along just in the world, every couple minutes you'd just fall through the ground and you'd have to restart the game.
That's not very good.
No,
That sounds like an error. Or sounds like a problem, rather. Like a
it
difficult
was a big
platforming
problem.
challenge.
Yeah, and I had taken some simulation classes in college, and like with the physics, and I just wanted to have fun with it, and I did have a lot of fun with it. I was in the atrium. I don't know if you guys know what the atrium is called, but it's a big cave that's got a roof and it's got like tunnels. I don't know if that's actually in the game, but I put some rocks in there that had a positive loss for when you bounce. So like that, once you bounce, instead of losing energy, I made a gain energy. So I had all these rocks bouncing around in there. It was sure a lot of fun.
That I like that. I might roll with that in other projects just as a heads up, if you don't mind, rather. But that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, kind of looking back on things, obviously enough for Bionicle fans, this game is legendary. It's as long as I've been invested in Bionicle and kind of intermixed with the community, it's been like the holy grail. Like people have been trying to locate source code or like a rumored game disc that came in a bag of cereal, like for years, absolutely years. So, kind of looking back, now that the game has resurfaced, it's out in the public, there's a group working on it and kind of bringing it into a playable state that it wasn't even quite in way back when.
Right.
And how does that feel? How does that feel now, looking at all the work that went into it, not just kind of vanishing into history?
I think it's really cool. I'm actually a bit surprised by it, and not because I know that the Bionicle toys are just so cool. When I started on the game, this was back in 2000. Bionicles weren't even a thing. Nobody in the public knew about them. And we have, of course, some prototype toys at work that we could play with, but nobody else knew them. And when they started to come out, I think they came out in McDonald's maybe first. I'm not sure. And then you could buy the little tubes at the store. And my kids loved them. My kids were around, I don't know, probably a toddler up to 9, 10 years old, and they just loved them, and they thought it was really cool that I was making a game about that. I found out that it was starting to become a big deal over the years when people just started asking me about the game. I guess people saw my name in the video credits in one of the videos that was out there. And my name's kind of unique, so it wasn't really hard to track me down. And I saw the gradual snowball effect of people getting interested in the game, and I thought it was kind of weird, but I did think it was kind of cool. I never believed it get to the point where it is now, especially since I had the prototype game for 20 years, and personally I couldn't find it. I just found that like a month ago in some boxes that were from another house after a move. So I'm happy to see it. It's really cool, but it has surprised me, at least how far it's gone.
That's wonderful. No, it's super exciting, and I mean, I've played it a handful of times in the various different stages of its modern development. It's fun. It's so much fun. It's genuine. Like, I really like a lot of the challenging aspects of it. Obviously, I like the novelty of getting to swing around with a giant axe and just have a lot of fun in levels like that. Real quick, I wanted to piggyback off of something you mentioned very briefly. Prototypes. Vahkiti had asked us to ask you to tell us the story of your sand Tarakava again.
Yeah, this was pretty much near the end of development. It was probably around August of 2001, and we had a group activity during the day just to get everybody together and just have some fun. It was kind of a stressful time at the time. We were putting in 70-hour work weeks, and we just wanted to have some fun. So we went down to the local bowling alley, which was pretty close to where we were developing. And I can't remember if it was my programming lead or somebody on the project says, okay, the first person who makes a strike gets this sand Tarakaba. So we all put our names on the list and we went through it. And I think we went through one full time and nobody got a strike. And then we went through again and I was near the bottom and I got a strike. So I got the sand Tarakaba.
Do you still have it?
I do not. I didn't have a job after 9/11, and I ended up selling it on eBay. I think somebody that you guys probably know got it. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, it was just a Lego brick toy. I just thought it was just any other normal toy. But I saw that I think there were some others that had been selling, and so I wanted to put it up there and see how it would sell. And I think I got around $65 for it or something, which really helped pay the bills at the time. So yeah, I was
2001 money.
yeah, right. So
Hey.
that's the story of I somebody's got that still. I don't know exactly who it is, but I think they're involved somehow with the project.
Interesting, because our understanding is that there are like 5 out there. This isn't
Oh, yeah?
one of them. Like, it's just a replica that I made. It's not an actual
Oh,
proper
yeah.
one.
Right.
So, but no, that's fascinating. I've never actually talked to someone that had one. So that's interesting. That's really cool. That's a fun story.
Yeah. I think there were some others that were given out as well. I don't remember. Just it seems like they gave away 2 or 3 of them. It seems like there was one of the little bug ones they gave away, maybe another one, but I don't recall, and I may not have been eligible since I won the first one. So, but yeah,
No,
it
that
was kind
makes
of cool
sense.
to
That's
have.
fair. Yeah. Do you
I guess
still own
the
any of
rarest
the? What was that?
the rarest part of that, I guess, was the mask, because there was something special about that mask, and there may be only one of them like that. I don't really know, but that was where the real value was, because some of the other toys you could replicate, but the other pieces, but that mask, it had something really rare to it, and that's why the person who bought it was really excited.
It's so, like, for instance, I have this. It is a near exact replica. It is missing 2 pieces. The jaw piece in dark gray, and like what you were saying, the mask. That mask is not a unique design. However, it does only come in yellow in that. So that's what makes that really kind of sought after. Because, of course, obviously enough, Bionicle got very popular with the collecting of masks, and different mask
Yeah.
colors and variants were really, really highly sought after. So, yep, no, people are still looking for that.
Right.
So, all right, Nick, go ahead and follow us up.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is a question actually from a friend of mine, Toa Gonal. Outside of what the versions that have slipped out to us, the alphas and the betas for Legends of Mana Nui, were there any levels or features, I should say, that the team considered developing, but it never really managed to get into any versions that got out to us that you really liked, or any concepts that maybe didn't even make it into actual builds?
Sure, there was a few things. There were some things I wanted to do with the physics that never really got into it, that I played with a
Love
bit.
hearing that.
Some of the stuff that we were writing was in OpenGL. You can do some cool lighting effects. So there was one point where I put a fire in a cave, and you could see it flicker off the walls, and I thought that was pretty cool. I also put lightning in the game, where the sky would just kind of flash, and there wasn't an actual lightning bolt, but you could see the lightning flashing. The one thing that I thought really should have gone into the game but never made it was that when you would, like, you'd throw a fireball at some of the bad guys, the parts would actually blow off, and then they'd just fly off into the distance and bounce. So the individual pieces would come off, and it would destroy the object. And I thought that was really cool. But with Bionicle, the Lego group, and with the Bionicles and the violence, they thought that was way too much, and they didn't want to go there. But that would have been so cool to put in the game. I think the code for that might actually still be in there. I'm not sure. I don't know if you could ever activate that, but it'd be cool if you could.
Oh, God in the Sky, Liam, could you maybe take a look at that? I don't know. Sorry, he's still listening, but he'll definitely see this later. And actually, it's hilarious that it's funny to me, anyways, that you mentioned that the Lego group was not really down for that whole concept, because they went on for a lot of their, Lego Star Wars or Lego Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all that stuff, video games that they would eventually go on to make with a very similar idea, actually, very kind of exactly like that. And it breaks my heart that they were in just that really weird place, especially when Bionicle was first starting off. Concept about violence, cartoony or otherwise. Because you're right, that it is a neat idea, and I also am imagining like the fireball lighting effects that you're talking about, and it sounds amazing.
It would have been cool to add for sure. But I did notice that near the end, like specifically after 9/11, is when some of that they still had kind of an aversion to the violence with the Lego brick toys anyway. But after 9/11, it's just they didn't want to see any sort of violence. So anything like that got shut down out of the game, and I think part of that was why it got canceled, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because they are much more humanoid. They are much more. It's much more one-to-one with a Bionicle figure because of the way that they're built compared to like a minifig, which can kind of explode. No, hey, it's cartoony, and then they put themselves back together, and it's fine.
Right.
But yeah, so I regrettably I do understand it. But Eljay, you were about to say something?
Oh no, I was just saying it is kind of that awkward area for them because on the one hand, listen, no violence, as little violence as possible. Let's try and keep this family friendly. On the other, I'm not sure how many other situations you have folks walking around with giant axes and swords and not somehow encountering violent situations. But
it's a very Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle situation because I'm not that much of a fan of that series just in passing, but being interested in practical effects and stuff like that, you hear about like the second live action movie that they did where the turtles actually all of the weapons are glued to their backs and they never actually are seen using them. So very similar situation, which frustrating. I get it. Toys, kids, yeah. But I do actually have a sort of an off-topic branch off of that. From J. Whitebread Edwards, they are asking whether or not all of the staff at Sapphire could dance as well as the Batorn and Turaga could.
I suppose they probably could dance, but some of them were probably pretty nerdy. I don't know, maybe a few of them knew the Carlton. We didn't have any dancing activities like our bowling party, and that's probably a good thing. So.
Well, the beautiful thing is that you can still code on a broken ankle. Trust me.
True.
I'm not going to try it.
I'm just saying that if you have to, coding is a hands situation, dancing is a feet situation. You can make it work. But before I advocate more injury, Eljay, if you'd like to, hop on another one for me real quick.
Real quick. We've been reminded. So the concept you're talking about of enemies kind of like flying into pieces. I kind of forgot that was actually used in a later Bionicle game. How familiar are you with Bionicle Heroes from 2006?
I'm not at all, really.
Okay, it's a Traveler Tales game, TT Games, and they do all the Lego Star Wars and Lego Indiana Jones and stuff like that. They made a Bionicle game, really, really, really deviated from the formula, like a lot. Like imagine instead of like a Lego Star Wars game where you get to explore, you get to walk around, you go through all these intricate, wide open levels and solve puzzles. Imagine it's an arcade game where you go in one straight line. Like you keep walking forward and the line kind of winds and you go from point A to point B. And you just shoot things. The enemies in that, when you depleted their health, they would fly back and just shatter into pieces.
Oh, cool.
So they eventually went with it in a way.
You were a genius unappreciated in his time, that much is for sure.
Yeah, well, the way I did it, each object had its own motion system, so everything interacted with each other. So I took the motion vector of the fireball or whatever hit them, and I transferred the speed and the general direction to all the pieces. but give it a little bit of randomness. So the pieces would just kind of fly a little bit, and they would just hit. They would fly out and bounce and roll on the ground. It was a really cool effect. I showed it to my lead, and they thought it was cool, but they didn't think that they could ever get that approved for use in the game, which was kind of sad. It was a cool effect.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Nick.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. So over the development cycle, if you can recall, was there any particularly notable roadblocks in terms of getting the game to the point that you guys managed to get it to? Like any, oh, hey, for some reason all the toys' heads are on backwards, or some kind of crazy coding issue that you guys had to go into Skunkworks to deal with?
Well, at the end, of course, I mentioned the video card compatibility, so I won't go there again. But
right.
The biggest issue is we just didn't have enough time to get everything we wanted into it. There were some changes in direction as well over the few months, so that we didn't exactly know what we were supposed to put in there, and we'd put something in and then take it out. But the biggest problems that I had, I was working on physics, was the part about falling to the ground. There's one part of the physics that I was supposed to build is where a TOA would jump, and you wouldn't quite make it to the other side, and you had to use his like claws to catch the edge, and that was really hard to do in the physics, because I had to like do some ray casting of where the claws were and come down to see if there's anything to catch on. I did a lot of testing on that, and I never really did get that to the point where I liked it, but it worked. So you could jump and you'd claw and you'd catch onto the cliff. I think there's probably some cases in the levels that you guys have seen that you require that, but I haven't really seen the levels, so I'm not sure just how much that's a part of the game now.
I do remember that being a distinctly divisive issue throughout a lot of game development in the early 2000s anyway. So the fact that you were able to make something even passable, I mean, it's already good on you.
Yeah, it works, but you might fall a lot. So you probably have to get kind of the right feel for it. Make sure you see. Basically, I had a vector that would shoot like when you jump, and it would use the gravity to pull you down, so it would make the arc. But it was all like real physics equations that were doing that. So
I imagine that was a little bit rough on the engine.
It wasn't actually as bad as you would think. The part that we did have that was rough on the engine was scanning all the polygons that were in the terrain. So that probably chewed up a lot of the CPU time, because there's just so much that you had to check with to see if you were colliding with it, like colliding with objects or colliding with the terrain and things like that. So that was always a problem with the physics. Which was my primary goal or primary task in the game.
Gotcha. Eljay, would you like to take the next one?
Yeah, no, so I had another question here. This is asked by Glacier Experiment. They do not elaborate as to what experiment it is, but they did have a question. They said in both The Legend of Mount Nui, there is a wide variety of enemies and wildlife that appear to be buildable as actual models, many of which would end up appearing in a 2002 set called the BIONICLE Master Builder. Their question, if this would be something in your knowledge, is how were these enemies created and then implemented into the games? So, like, were their models sent in by LEGO to draw a reference from, or were they creatures that you guys built, or kind of a column A, column B kind of thing?
Right. So this goes back to the Terracotta. Pretty much all of the objects that I saw in the game, we had physical toys for them. So we had data wranglers that would take these toys and they would model the Lego bricks on the computer and then animate them somewhat close to they could have animating the way if the toys had an animation. So I don't think that the Sapphire modelers had really any creative license to do that. We just got the toys from the Lego group and we put them in the game. Once we had those modeled and we didn't need them anymore, that's when the the ownership of the toys came into question, and so that's when some of us ended up with some of those. So it was all from the Lego group, and all of them were physical toys. So there weren't models that I saw, or there might have been some like concept art, but I wasn't involved in as much of that. It was pretty much just the toys.
Interesting, because yeah, no, I remember distinctly like a lot of different creatures.
Hmm.
They were just straight up custom creations. Like they didn't release in any set. They weren't any mod like Nick. I'm thinking like lightning bugs. You know, like they those weren't in a model. They are buildable certainly, and they showed up in other games. Like they showed up in the Game Boy game. They showed up in like the Matt Nui online game. But that's fascinating. That's interesting. Huh.
I guess it would make some measure of sense if there was like, because they, like you said, they did sort of appear in some of the other media. So it being centrally located Lego is interesting. Just to hear that they were in the works that far back is curious. It's very curious.
Yeah, we had a lot of the toys way back then. This was even before the Bionicles were released. Nobody knew about any of them, and we had all these prototype toys in our office. We had one desk that had them all that I sitting on it at one time, so that if anybody had any questions, they could go in and look at the model and see how it worked, make sure that they were using the model as it physically existed. So, yeah, if you see it in the game, I'm pretty sure there was an actual Lego brick model of them in the office.
That's fascinating.
Bugs and everything. Yep.
Wow.
There might not have been an actual kit for them, but somebody built them.
Well, that is kind of how, that was kind of the whole point of the Master Builder set. It was a bunch of parts. And correct me if I'm wrong, did they have a bunch of example instructions, or was it just kind of go nuts about it?
Oh no, it was 15 different models you could build, and there were instructions for all 15.
I actually do have one of the buckets that they came in laying around. I'll see if I can go dig it out here in just a little while. But and so all of those eventually did make it out to the public in some actual buildable form, which I think is pretty neat. Mm-hmm. But and then you were very much encouraged to sort of do your own thing with it. It was just basically, just throwing half a pound of parts at you and saying go nuts. But actually, probably a little bit more than that. But Eljay, do you want to take the question from Molk real quick, or do you want to hit something else?
Yeah, I think this is a good one. So another question from an individual by the name of Wolk asks, were there plans for the players to fight against Makuta at the end of Legend of Matanui, or was it planned to just be a cutscene? And if so, what form would Makuta have taken, and who came up with that form?
Right. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about that. Most of what I knew from the game was from assignments, so I didn't really ever get the big picture of the whole game. I'm pretty sure, but that by the end it was going to be a cutscene because there wasn't time to finish the game. There might have been a point where they actually played with them, but I don't really know. I don't have that information.
Fair enough. No, that works.
Okay. I apologize. I might be getting a kind of an important phone call. Could you give me just 2 seconds, please?
Wow. All right, rude. All right. In that case, let me see. So let me go ahead and ask my partners in crime here, assuming they're still listening. Liam, Sort, would you guys like us to kind of go ahead and just like take 5, or?
I'm still here. Depends on how long you guys want to go on for. I'm not in a hurry. I mean, we've still got half an hour.
I'm pretty good as well for time. Most of my day was
available
already
Kind of
I will say
thrown
is,
out. Ford, if you could write down a timestamp so I know exactly where to cut this without having to hunt around.
Right.
You back, Nick?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry. I thought that was my boss. It was not my boss. It was Sirius XM Radio.
Wow, amazing. All right, I'm dipping back out again then.
All right, cool. All right, in that case, Nick, go ahead and take it forward from wherever you would like.
All right, sure. And actually, I do have a question just for over the last couple of years. Whenever you stopped working on this game, how did you really follow anything that happened with Bionicle afterwards? Because you missed Bionicle Heroes. That's understandable. But did you notice it as sort of a media entity outside of you? Because you mentioned that your kids were kind of into it as well.
Answer to that probably kind of unique to me. Frankly, after the game, I didn't want to have anything to do with Bionicles at all. I had been working with them all summer long, 70-hour work weeks. And then after 9/11, I was let go when the game got canceled because I'd been hired to work on the game. So it was not really a positive experience for me when I left Sapphire. And by that point, I didn't really follow them at all. My kids still had some of the toys, but I really didn't follow it at all until I think there was a movie that came out, and then people started contacting me about my involvement in the game. That was probably 5 years after, so I really didn't follow Bionicles at all much after I left.
And that is understandable. I mean, I can certainly imagine the. I too have also worked on projects that you pour a significant amount into, and then all of a sudden you get told by forces outside of your control, "Hey, stop that," and it can very much be a kick in the teeth. So, yeah,
I'd had enough for a while.
If I may interject
hooray
for a second, I was just going to say I find it very fascinating that we, as the people who have been working in this community like for so long, it's interesting to hear somebody from the outside say, "Yeah, no, I worked on Bionicle briefly, then I never followed it again." And I take that to heart, knowing that I've also worked as a commercial Lego artist from 2010 to 2017 or so. I totally get it. So I just wanted you to know that that's how I also felt. I totally understand. Outside looking in, I understand.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was. I loved working on it, and I don't have any of the bad feelings anymore towards it. But my kids still have good experiences with them because I didn't let it ruin their experience, because they had Lego Bionicle toys through the years. So, but for me, it's like I had enough. So I did some other different things since then, which has kept me entertained. I actually did the Las Vegas slot machines for a while, and got into some other things. So I had plenty on my plate.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad that there are no more hard feelings and all that, because you've probably been one of my favorite folks to talk to over the course of this circuit, and it's been very interesting. It's just,
Well, I've been glad to offer whatever I can, because I think it's just cool that you guys are so interested in something that I thought would just completely die. So
we have a penchant for holding torches for a very long time. So
I don't know.
and actually,
I don't know what you're talking about, Nick. I mean, I've seen a Bionicle once, maybe, and I mean, it looked okay, but I didn't go anywhere past that. So
Well, I mean, yeah, the only reason you're here is because we needed somebody from NPR, and they told us no.
yeah,
But,
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, where's my
but
coffee?
Actually, as far as the project is concerned, with Legend of Mana Nui, for the rebuild that is being worked on right now, do you have any personal hopes for the direction that it goes? Do you have anything that you would like to see in it eventually? Would you even be interested in trying to download it if you have time for games anymore, which I realize is a very rare luxury these days?
I definitely would like to play it. There are a lot of parts of the game that I never have even seen. When I was doing the coding, mostly the physics, I was in just certain areas of the game, and you couldn't really even get to parts of the game without hard coding in it and actually jumping into that part of the game. So you couldn't actually play through it to get to the different screens. So there are so many parts of the game, some of the puzzles, some of the levels that I've never seen. In fact, we did a video, live video a while back going through the game, and it was really cool because I have not seen all those screens, and there was some really cool stuff in there that I wish I had seen. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in playing. My kids, I've got a number of kids, and they are so much into gaming, they would probably love to play it as well, especially knowing that this is something that I worked on, that I helped create.
It is super cool. Liam, I would definitely forewarn whoever you have working primarily on physics on over at Lightstone, just before that happens, because I don't know how much you have tweaked anything that Darvell has worked on. But With all that being said, I think we've worked through the majority of our questions that we're dying to ask. Eljay, unless you have anything else specifically.
Yeah, before we get to a couple of final ones, kind of your thoughts on things and what you're up to now, there's one more question we got from a handful of viewers. And I would be remiss not to mention that a lot of people are really excited to watch this. They have, again, like I said, been following this game for years. Its status in the online community has been nothing short of mythical. It's genuinely been followed for a while, and the end result, I know, has gotten a lot of people really excited. So, from them, and of course from us, thank you so much for doing this, for being here, and for being so willing to take the time with us today.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to offer what knowledge I have.
Awesome.
Sure.
No, and it's always insightful. The question these folks had, and I feel like we can kind of gather the answer to part of this. Is there kind of a bittersweet feeling regarding the game and how things went down, and how do you feel knowing that it ended up getting completed and released on account of fan efforts all these years later? And could you ever have imagined the game having a cult following like this after all this time?
All right. So I always knew the game was cool, and so were the toys. When I started there and I saw the prototype toys, I mean, I knew they were cool. I knew they would go big. Um, like I said when I started the project, nobody even knew anything about Bionicles. And as we got through the game, and they finally did get released before the game was canceled, my kids just loved the toys, and they would go down to Kmart, and we would all they'd all get to pick which one they wanted. I think they had 6 toys that came out first, and everybody picked one, and they all got one. So I wouldn't say that it's really bittersweet as much. It's just a sadness that it never got out, and the work that we did just didn't get into the hands of the kids who would have loved to play it back then. So over the years, I've had lots of people contact me who saw my name in the credits. And since I have such a unique name, they'd ask me about it. And so it was really cool to see that. And I really was surprised how many people were interested in it over the years. I think it got to the point, maybe since it was such of a mythical game that nobody had and nobody could play, that it did get much bigger than it ever would have been if it had actually come out. So that's what I think is really cool, that it's that, like, I think somebody mentioned the Holy Grail, and it's something that was out there that nobody ever thought they would actually get, but then finally did. So I think that's why it's gotten so big, is because finally something that had been sought after so much was finally actually somewhat playable. And all that time I had a copy of it and I couldn't find it because I put it in a box from when I moved. So it took me a while to actually get that copy, and I just found it in my garage like a month ago. Maybe even so yeah. And I don't think it's really bittersweet. It's just, I guess that's the definition of bittersweet, though. It was sad, but I wasn't as much bitter, at least not now. I'm just so happy that people are interested in it now.
No, that's fair. That makes plenty of sense. I get that. Okay, in that case, Nick, if you want to go ahead and take us out with the last 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, sure thing. Let's take a look here. We have several. So I know that you didn't really have a vision of the long game in terms of what the title was actually going to fully contain, but do you happen to know anything about in what ways the game was going to depart from stuff that LEGO might have already had in place for Bionicle story or anything along those lines? Like, as far as the narrative is concerned, was there anything that came out of left field for you?
The problem with that is I really didn't find out much about the lore and the story and all that while I was working on the game. I mean, most of that was pretty tight-mouthed at the time. It was kind of a secret. We weren't really supposed to talk too much about it because everything that we were doing was like not released. So I never really heard about much of what was going on except my specific little niche, which was the physics. So I don't really have too much to say about that. My kids probably know more about that because they've watched the movies and they played more with the toys. So um, I guess that's about it.
Okay,
I
and
didn't.
that's totally understandable. I mean, I realize that
Yeah.
it's especially for the development phase that you were in. I can definitely see some, the books that Lego was working out of, the ideas that Lego was working out of themselves not being solidified and getting all the way to you. A
Yeah.
little bit of a far reach there. But another user that goes by you, followed by a whole bunch of numbers, which I'm not going to say because my throat hurts a little bit. They ask, I've seen your LinkedIn profile and that you still do work in the Utah area. Are you still working with Silicon Slopes, or are you? I guess who are you working with now? What are you? What all are you in the process of doing right now?
Well, for the past year and a half, I've been working from my home for a company called Proficient, actually right here. I've been working on various contracts for people. What I'm doing right now is writing not games, iPhone software for installing Kidda smoke alarms in a home, so that they're smart alarms, so you can control them and test them and everything's directly from your phone. So I've been doing iPhone programming for about the last 11 years, and I've done quite a few cool projects on that. So I've worked for a number of different companies, a number of different projects for iOS, and that's been a lot of fun. I very much enjoyed doing mobile programming, which is quite a bit different than doing video games. I haven't actually worked on any iPhone games, although that would kind of be cool. But yeah, I've been doing iPhone programming.
Gotcha. Very interesting to hear that you're working on iOS-based Internet of Things stuff, because that's just terrifying to me. But very cool either way, and I'm a big fan of making sure that people are safe and can manage their safety devices very well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything else that you have coming down the pipe that you want people to know about specifically? I know you said that you haven't really been working in the game space for a while, but clear, you have that Internet of Things thing. You have all the iPhone software that you're working on. Is there anything that you want people to know about?
I'm not really in video games anymore, and I actually don't even play as much. Getting older, and I'm kind of sad. I've got a couple of Pokemon games on my Switch. I've got through one of them, but I just don't play as much as I used to. I'm kind of sad. I guess I don't have as much time. But I do play with my kids occasionally. We've gone out playing Pokemon and walking around and doing some of the events, so that's been fun. But I don't really have anything for the gaming world. I've been working on more serious stuff like the smoke alarms, and I've been doing banking apps and some things that don't seem really exciting, but it's all cutting edge, and I love to do cutting edge stuff. So I've always tried to do something that was new and exciting. I did military simulators for 5 years, right when I got out of college, and I even went to England for a number of different times, installing one of our simulators in a simulator for the Royal Air Force there in the UK. And I've done slot machines, which is really cool. So I don't know what I'm working on from 1 minute to the next. I've got a new project that I'm going to start on in a month, and I have no idea what it is. So it's kind of fun to just change what you're working on so you don't get bored and do something that's new and exciting. So
I'm a big fan of everything that you just said, just in general, because that's a lifestyle that I could definitely see getting into. But just out of my own curiosity, what was the simulator? Just because I've got a little bit of a vested interest in things like that.
So this was a flight simulator for the C-130J cargo simulator. That's like the big cargo plane with the 4 big engines, like the big one. And this was for the Royal Air Force in the UK. And we were working with the colonel there in the simulator most of the time for probably a total of 6 weeks. And when we got done, he let me at the controls and he instructed me. He was a flight instructor as well that taught new pilots how to fly the C-130J. And I took off from the airport and I went around and cycled and I landed it. So it was really cool to actually use the simulator that I had been. I did mostly the visuals for it, like stuff you see on the terrain.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Now,
so,
before I nerd out too deep into that, because that's something I can. Flight sims are fun and all that.
Sure.
But either way, I appreciate you carving out time for us, and it's been a joy talking to you. And I hope that you see what Team Lightstone is working on, and I do hope that you actually get the chance to see the project that over 20 years ago at this point you worked on come to fruition here in the next couple of years.
I hope so too. I'm definitely interested in that. I'm sure my kids are too.
Very glad to hear it. So then, unless you have any questions for us, or anything else that you would like to say to the people out there.
There is one thing that we didn't talk about, and that's the Game Boy Advance game that came out. And the reason I bring that up is because my son actually did testing for it when the game was, when they were working on the game. I didn't work on it, but he came in after school and he tested the game for them. And they ended up giving him one of the prototype Game Boy Advance machines for the Game Boy Advance wasn't out at the time either. And the funny part about it is he got a game credit for that. His name is in the little booklet. His name is
awesome.
at the end of the credits, but I didn't get that credit. He's even got a page on IMDb for that. So he thinks that's pretty cool.
That is really cool, actually. Oh, and I would love to see that prototype GBA kit. That sounds really cool.
Next Bionicle Day, I know who we got to interview.
Oh,
now.
yeah, definitely.
Claire.
Definitely.
I actually did a story for him for doing that for the local newspaper. Did a feature story with him. This is when he was 9, and it was published in a couple papers here in Utah. I don't know if you can still find that since it was 2000, probably 2001. But
it's worth a look.
Yeah, I'd even like to see if I can find a copy of that. But yeah,
if I may interject, my recommendation would be to definitely look up near your library, see if they might have a copy on record.
Sure.
Either their
I
microfilm.
probably saved one too somewhere. But
yeah, that's possible.
I don't know.
Gotcha.
All right, back to the ether I go.
Yeah. Thank you, Oswert. But well, that is really cool, and I do wish that we had a little bit more on the GBA game to have asked, but our notes weren't geared in that particular direction. But next time, you had better believe it. And if your son would like to also drop by, that is also perfectly fine with us next time. Right?
Yeah.
But it's been awesome having you, Darvell. You again, far and away one of my favorite people that I've spoken to over the course of this whole thing.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So with all that being said, thank you all for tuning in for the follow-up to the 810 Day 2021 festivities with Darvell Hunt. I have been Lehari.
I'm Eljay.
And this has been Darvell Hunt. Sorry about that. And we appreciate you coming by, and thank you all for tuning in. You have a good day.
Thanks.
United, we embraced our duty. Light found itself and illuminated our destiny. The city of the Great Spirit, my island home, refound. New legends awake, but old lessons must be remembered. This is the way of the Bionicle.